mentioned on Monday that when our adult children were much younger, Catherine and I made the decision to ban Ben 10 in our home. Now, you may have watched Ben 10 yourself, or you may have allowed your children or grandchildren to watch Ben 10, which is your decision to make. And my comments are not a judgment on you or anyone who may have allowed that, but simply a decision that we made for the benefit of our family. I mean, there may be shows that we've allowed our children to watch, that you've said no to for your children or for your grandchildren. However, having made that decision, we now had to consider what practical steps we would take with regards to this particular show. Do we throw away the Ben 10 videos and DVDs, or do we hold on to them until the children are older and are able to acknowledge the obnoxiousness of the main character themselves? Do we throw away the Ben 10 toys, or do we allow the children to keep playing with them with the understanding that the toys themselves aren't obnoxious? Well, on Monday, we thought about God returning to Jerusalem and actively helping his people by removing their sin from their presence. And today we'll think about the practical element of that idea and the question, how does God banish sin from his people? Zechariah 5 verse 5. Then the angel who was speaking to me came forward and said to me, "Look up and see what is happening." And I asked, "What is it?" He replied, "It is a basket." And he added, "This is the iniquity of the people throughout the land." Then the cover of lead was raised, and there in the basket sat a woman. He said, "This is wickedness." And he pushed her back into the basket and pushed its lead cover on it. Then I looked up, and there before me were two women with the wind in their wings. They had wings like those of a stork, and they lifted up the basket between heaven and earth. Now, it shouldn't need to be said. However, the scriptures here are not declaring that women are evil. I mean, some are, and some men are. However, that's not the point of this symbolic vision. The symbolism of the woman in the basket is not linking women and sin, although all women sin, just as all men sin. The woman in the basket is a reference to Ezekiel and the idolatry that was occurring in the temple of God that then resulted in the glory of God departing from the temple. Ezekiel 8 verse 3. The Spirit lifted me up between heaven and earth, and in visions of God he took me to Jerusalem, to the entrance of the north gate of the inner court, where the idol that provokes to jealousy stood. And there before me was the glory of the God of Israel. So the context in Ezekiel is that the people of God have erected an idol in the temple of God. God's own children are worshipping an idol in the temple where the glory of God dwells, and that idol, the idol that provokes God to jealousy, Jeremiah tells us, is the queen of heaven, Asherah. See, the woman in the basket is symbolic of Asherah, that Canaanite goddess, who ultimately is symbolic of idolatry among the people of God. God is banishing idolatry from his people. In Zechariah 5 verse 10. Where are they taking the basket? I asked the angel who was speaking to me. He replied, to the country of Babylonia, to build a house for it. When the house is ready, the basket will be set there in its place. Now, I'll go into more detail about this on Sunday, but God is practically dealing with the problem of sin by physically removing idolatry from the land. Likewise, God has dealt with our eternal problem of sin through the death and resurrection of Jesus. However, we still face the problem of sin in our lives, and like the symbolism of the woman in the basket, we have to practically and physically consider how we remove sin from our lives. And so with that in mind, why don't you take a minute to consider how you can physically remove one sin that you're struggling with in your life. Okay, and then spend a minute in prayer and ask God to help you to come up with a real and practical way to banish that sin.